Tonight on America's Dumbest Criminals. Ever wonder why you can never find office supplies? We've got proof they aren't getting grabbed by gremlins. This man is on the run and has a reason to fear he's the target of a 21-gun salute. And this joker isn't just littering, he's trashing his chances of making a clean break. All their dirty little secrets will come to light here on America's Dumbest Criminals.
Delta 1526, give me a call on your primary.
Now, welcome your hosts for America's Dumbest Criminals, Daniel Butler and Debbie Allen.
Hi there. It is so good to have you with us. Well, as always, we have a cast of characters worthy of Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment.
Yeah, well, but Debbie, that's a real big, thick book, okay? We just have a half-hour show here.
Okay, so to shorten it, would that make our show Crimes and Puns?
Well, yeah, okay. I'm afraid it does, all right? But let's not think about that right now, okay?
That was bad. Okay, let's carry on with our first story.
All right, why not? But speaking of carrying on, a crook in Alabama got carried away by police after he carried off a surveillance monitor from a convenience store. But to his surprise, he left a lasting impression.
Smile, because here's this week's installment of Caught on Camera.
We had a young man who had decided to burglarize a local convenience store at about 11:30 at night after it had closed. Took a car jack and threw it through the glass front door and made entrance to the store. While inside, he started looking around for the things that he wanted, and in doing so, he looked up and saw himself captured on a monitor. He was being videotaped, not realizing that the monitor had nothing to do with the camera and the VCR. He proceeded to attempt to steal the monitor. In the process of doing so, he dropped his wallet. We retrieved the tape. We brought it back to the police department, looked at it, and one of the investigators identified him, and we brought him to the station and started to talk to him. And Charles, where were you last night?
I was home.
You were home?
Yeah.
Okay. You didn't go up to Hickey's to the convenience store last night?
No.
Not you?
Didn't go up to Hickey's.
Okay. No. Have you got your wallet on you?
Yeah.
Do you? Can I see it? He produced the wallet, which was a brand new wallet, and he opened it up and the wallet was empty. And then we produced the wallet that we'd found in the store, the one with his driver's license and all of his papers in it.
That's not my wallet.
And we said, well, what about the driver's license and all the identification that we found in the wallet that apparently belongs to you? Someone else has a wallet with all your identification.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, sir.
We produced the videotape and we put it on and we played it for him. He said, that's not me. It's someone who looks like me, but it's not me. Apparently the judge didn't agree with this opinion and decided that it was him and found him guilty of the crime.
You know, there's something to be said for tossing caution to the wind. Well, in his pursuit of personal freedom, our next criminal also tossed evidence.
Oh, yeah. But wouldn't you know it, in doing so, he also tossed his hat in the ring to be featured in the segment we call Something to Remember Me By.
This is my partner, Aubrey Hawkins.
This is my partner, James Burns.
It was a while back. We had a person that was driving towards us in a car that has high beams on. I flashed my high beams a little bit to see if he could dim them. And normally, what do most motorists do? They hit the high beams just to kind of, signal them. And he didn't do it. He went past us, and we just made a U-turn, got behind him, and tried to stop him.
And of course, as luck would have it, guy wouldn't stop. So we chased and chased and chased him, about 100 miles an hour. During this, we saw him throw something out the window.
We finally got the guy stopped. He pulled over and surrendered.
We went back and we found the fanny pack. It had a Glock 9mm pistol in it.
Had some drug paraphernalia, syringes, drug scales, good stuff like that.
And had a list, kind of like a shopping list as to who this guy owed some drugs to.
It also had a Texas Department of Corrections identification card, which is what inmates have to carry with them when they're in prison.
After we got back to the station and we was booking this guy into jail, we asked him, why are you running? He says, well, I had a warrant out for me.
And that's just something that we wouldn't have really even arrested him for. It's just a really bottom-of-the-rung misdemeanor. Aubrey, you know what we call people like this?
No, what?
Job security.
Got it. You know, the typical talk around the water cooler, who won the big game, who got the promotion, who's your favorite co-host in America's Dumbest Criminals?
Oh,
No.
people talk about that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Make a dream, can he?
Yeah, really. Well, the hot topic for folks at an office in Pinellas Park, Florida, was the dastardly dealing of a thieving co-worker. We've got the infrared footage that caught him red-handed. Take a look.
We had received a number of calls of reporting theft at a business, and they were receiving thefts taking place. They had an idea who was making doing the stealing, but they didn't really have the evidence. So with the help of surveillance camera, they themselves thought that they could catch them and handle it in-house. But unfortunately, the camera that they used didn't film at night. And what this subject would do, he'd go inside this office area and he'd turn out the light. And he'd go inside with a little pen light in his mouth, open up a filing cabinet, steal the money and leave. So they tried again to do something a little bit different. They put an infrared light on top of the filing cabinet. They catch the bad guy opening the door, turning out the light, putting the pen light in his mouth, and going through the filing cabinet, stealing the cash, and we got him in custody.
In Alabama, it's illegal to wear a fake mustache that causes laughter in church.
We've all heard the tall tales that fishermen tell about the one that got away. Well, we've got the first cousin to that sort of fishy fabrication. It involves a boater with a story that just doesn't hold water. Ahoy, mateys. Here comes an excuse that's all wet.
I was sitting in my office one morning. I hear I'll call him a gentleman, comes up to the front counter and he's talking with the receptionist. And I'm eavesdropping on the conversation. And he's telling her that he needed to get his boat taken off the stolen list. Well, being a boating officer, this really piques my interest. So I continue to listen, and he tells the secretary it really wasn't stolen. Apparently he was out in his boat and he got stuck upriver and he couldn't get it out. And rather than call somebody up there and pay a tow bill, he decided if he reported it stolen, the sheriff's office would have to go up and pick up the boat and it'd save him a whole lot of money. At this point, I know I need to go out and talk to this guy. So I go out there and invite him into the office and ask him to tell me again what I thought I had heard. And while I'm talking to him, I begin to smell what I believe is marijuana. So I ask him, I said, let me ask you, guy, you been smoking marijuana today? He said, well, not today, but I did have some last night. I said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you give me what you got on you? And I'll be darned if this guy didn't reach in his pocket and pull out a bag of marijuana. So as I'm standing there, I'm shaking my head, I'm thinking to myself, this guy has got to be one of the stupidest people I've ever met.
Okay. Well, now, this could have been a sentimental story. It could have been a one-in-a-million miracle that caused a prison guard who was now working as a security guard to cross paths with an ex-con who had learned the error of his ways. Heck, it could have been a made-for-TV movie for the Lifetime channel. Just one problem. The ex-con was up to his old tricks. So instead of being truly inspirational, it's tonight's Blue Light Special.
On this particular case, an individual came into the Belk's department store, was observed by the security guard working there for Belk's, who happens to be an off-duty Department of Corrections officer. He recognized the individual as being one who was just released from custody, having been charged with repeated larcenies, began observation of him, and in short order witnessed him commit a theft. And when approached by one of our uniformed police officers, the individual did somewhat of a little dance with our officer in there, wound up being sprayed out of necessity with pepper spray and subsequently placed under arrest. In this instance, it was very much to our benefit to have the Department of Corrections officer working the cameras.
The poet Ogden Nash once wrote that a door is what a dog is perpetually on the wrong side of. Well, the same could be said for a couple of guys on the wrong side of the law in our next story. Watch how the Crooks' plans come completely unhinged when officers move in.
One night, Captain Redder and I responded to a breaking and entering in progress at a local carryout store. When we got there, we saw the door ajar and believed that that was the point of entry. We were wrong. They had broken into a drive-through window and crawled through a small pane. It was too small to get the booty out, so they decided to take the door off the hinges from the inside. And they're in there talking about what they're going to do and so forth, standing behind the door. We could hear them, and we weren't sure just how close they were. So the captain says, well, I'll cover you. And I leaned in and kicked the door. It fell on both of them, knocked them both down. They're laying underneath the door. All you could see was a rubber glove sticking out where they're trying to get out from underneath the door. That was an easy one.
When traveling, the crew of ADC eats at Tony Roma's. Tony Roma's, over 200 locations worldwide.
And now for a man who's a mere pebble compared to Stone Phillips, here's Daniel with ABC Headline.
The bank robber never told his mom why he needed a ride to the bank. And when his so-called banking transaction took a little longer than expected, she decided to park the car and go shopping at a nearby grocery. And when her prodigal son came running from the building, he got nowhere fast. Hey, now, if you Star Wars fans felt a disturbance in the Force last May, there's a reason. That's when 4 men stole a copy of The Phantom Menace from a Wisconsin theater. But their getaway was anything but picture perfect. The film unspooled during their escape, and they left fingerprints all over it that they found impossible to remove. Now, fearing reprisal from law enforcement, Jedi Knights, and 8-year-old kids, they wisely chose to turn themselves in. You know, usually it's the victims of a robbery who are ordered to keep quiet, but it would have been smart advice for a suspect standing in a police lineup in San Diego. While witnesses looked on, each man was instructed to step forward and repeat the same phrase allegedly used by the bank robber: "Give me all your money." But old number 5 sealed his fate when he stepped forward and declared, "Hey, I didn't say that." And that closes the files on ADC Headlines, news ripped from somewhere near the back of your local newspaper. Debbie?
You've heard the expression, the long arm of the law. Well, in our next story, the officers didn't even have to stretch. And that's what makes the suspect a prime candidate for the segment we call Special Delivery.
Well, this is the Golden West Criminal Justice Training Center. It's our police academy here that various agencies throughout the county send recruits here. Just finished teaching a class, was coming out of the office, and I saw a young kid running up the walkway towards the office door. And as he got up close to the front door, he made an immediate right turn and dove over the top of this planter area here. Another guy came up telling me that he had just stolen a purse, so I bailed over the wall after him. Chased him down behind the building over here, threw my weapon, pointed at him, and told him to get down on the ground, and he did so, and I had to handcuff him myself, brought him back around after handcuffing him to the office here. I told him that, you know, he's going to be going away for 6 months because of a parole violation, and he should enlist in one of those English classes in the local Chino prison up there so he could learn to read what it says up there about the Criminal Justice Training Center. If he had read the sign, I'm sure he would have turned a different direction.
Have you ever gone to a yard sale and been amazed at how cheap everything is? Well, see, usually it's because people are just trying to unload things they no longer need. But we found out about a garage sale with an extra special reason for its low, low prices. See what we mean.
Several years ago, we had a boyfriend-girlfriend combination. They were drinking real heavy one Friday night and were getting pretty well plastered and decided to have a yard sale. They started looking around their house for items and realized they didn't have enough stuff. So they got to thinking about where they could get some more items. And they realized that their next door neighbor was an elderly lady who was in the hospital. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, they went next door and broke out a back window and just basically emptied the whole house into their front yard. The next day, they had the yard sale. They had a lot of business. They were selling all the furniture from the house, the paintings, the silverware. They were doing quite well and selling a lot of the items
when the family from the lady next door drove by just to check on the house that day. And as they drove by the front yard, they looked over and recognized the bed suits and the furniture from their mother's house. At that point, they stopped and called our police department. Patrol officers responded. As soon as the patrol car came into view, the gentleman took off running and basically got away for that day, but the lady couldn't run. We found out later that during the move at 2 o'clock in the morning, she was so inebriated that she fell and broke her ankle, and so when our officers showed up, she couldn't run from us. We set up a surveillance on the suspect's house the next day. He came home and had to break into his own house to try to get some clothes. Our officers surrounded the house. He wouldn't come to the door, so we considered it that he was probably pretty dangerous, but we weren't sure considering all the dumb stuff he had done before that. But we called out our SWAT team and had to kick in the door and search the house, and we found him hiding under a bed in his daughter's bedroom.
Police, freeze!
This garage sale didn't turn out to be much of a bargain for these guys.
Several years ago, I made a traffic stop for a subject who had blown a red light. When I approached the vehicle, I asked the driver for his driver's license, registration, and insurance card. Out of instinct, the passenger reached over. When he opened the glove box to look for the registration card, the glove box was stuffed with sterling silver flatware. And knives, forks, and spoons started tumbling out of the glove box. When I looked in the back seat, I could see that there was several TVs, a stereo set, and some other items that just looked out of place. We separated the driver and the passenger, and I asked them what they were doing. They said, oh, we were moving some items from our home.
I just got it from moving it back to my apartment.
I said, well, it's odd to keep your silverware in your glove box. When we separated them, I asked the driver, well, what makes your TV or your stereo set? And he gave me one make. The other officer that was there spoke to the passenger, asked him the same questions. He told us a totally different make and a totally different story. At that point, we were very suspicious of them. They gave us a consent to look in the vehicle, and we found some credit cards which had a person's name on them. We then contacted the owner of the property, and by strange coincidence, the police department was already at the scene investigating a burglary that the victim had just discovered. So we actually apprehended them before the victim knew that the stuff had been stolen.
That's good. Very cool. You know, don't you love that scene in all the old westerns where the cavalry comes riding to the rescue with guns blazing?
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful sight if you're a damsel in distress or the good townfolk. But now if you're the outlaw on the receiving end of all those bullets, it's a whole different picture.
Well, yeah, the bad townfolk, sure. For tonight's saga of We're Not Making This Up, we take you to the not-so-old West for a wild, wild story.
Well, we had a long-time career criminal who lived in our town who had been out about 6 months, and his favorite habit was methamphetamine and heroin. He liked to mix the two. He had gotten extremely high and was in the commission of a small-time crime when the police showed up, so he ran off. We didn't catch him until later in the day, and I was trying to start warming the guy up, you know, and make friends with him a little bit and say, hey, you know, I want to talk with you and hear your side of the story. And throughout the conversation, he kept saying to me, man, I'll tell you anything you want, just as long as you don't shoot at me, man. Just don't let those other cops shoot at me anymore, okay? I thought this was a bit odd because nobody had fired a shot. He'd been taken into custody without any incident whatsoever. So we got him back and started interviewing him, and I'm talking with him, and, you know, he tells me the story, and he tells me that he's coming across country. He's going through the brush and the weeds, and he comes up over the top of a hill, and all of a sudden he knew he was in trouble then because there was 20, 30 cops and they were all shooting at him. So he had dove off the ridge of this hill and rolled down. He cut himself, gone through a thicket, you know. We came to find out that the top of the hill he'd crested, that we never went up, was right above the Ogden Police Department shooting range. And he had seen all the officers at the bottom of it shooting and thought they were shooting at him. So he was pretty thankful that we had showed up at that time.
Go figure.
All right, little Debbie, it's time for us to holster our shooting irons for another week.
But we're going to be firing stories at you fast and furious when we return next week.
Now, if you've got a lead on a story or you just can't wait for more state-of-the-art stupidity, visit our website.
The address is www.dumbcrimes.com.
We want to thank you for joining us and extend our gratitude to the law enforcement officers. who make this show possible. Every day they lay their lives on the line to keep us safe from the stupidity of would-be criminals.
As always, we hope that we've all learned from others' mistakes.
But if you haven't, we just might see you next week on America's Dumbest Criminals. Yeah.